Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Silvia Christmann. I'm an executive coach. I work in leadership development. I work in capacity building. And right now, we're working with a lot of teams across the world, helping them stay focused, productive, and emotionally well-resourced. What do I mean by that? That means that I'm here to support those who are called to lead by example wholeheartedly and continue to stay emotionally resourced for themselves and for their teams. So before we begin, I want to invite you to actually just take a moment to arrive and get into the room. If you want to participate in this, if you want to listen, it'd be amazing if you could shut down some of your other devices and just be fully present, even if it's just for the first part of this right now. So if you can, just close your eyes, take a comfortable seated position, and then we're just going to take 3 deep inhales. You can raise your shoulders and you can expand your rib cage, and then you exhale. You're going to do that again. And exhale. We're going to do that one more time. Really expand your rib cage and exhale. Keep your eyes closed for another couple of seconds. And then when you're ready, come back into the room. Maybe you feel a little bit differently. Maybe you feel the same. I don't know. But I do want to encourage you to let us know what you're experiencing. This is participatory. If you want to share with us, we appreciate that. I want to hear from you. I want to hear what's working for you. What we just did is what I call a micro moment of mindfulness. Some of us are somewhere between decision-making fatigue and overwhelm on a good day, or completely lethargic and unproductive and distracted. Some of us are managing quite well. It's a day-to-day experience that all of us are going through right now. One thing that all of us have right now is little moments of micro mindfulness we can add into our day. And when we talk about productivity, I started talking about mindfulness because throughout the years, and I've been doing this for 12 years, I've been working with CEOs, founders, VCs, hedge funds, doctors, lawyers, you name it, for 12 years. And one thing I've learned in these 12 years is that productivity is not the next tool or the hack, a new hack that we pick up, but productivity really is a mindset in action. And it starts with diet, sleep, and exercise. So we here in my group, in my coaching group, we translate these into the 3 M's. Right now, especially, these 3 M's are really critical for you to set yourself up for success in the morning, throughout the day, and also at the end of the day. If you plan your day at the end of the day, and by that I mean the following day, of course, if you plan the following day at the end of the day, you're 60% more likely to actually keep those promises to yourself and others. An accountability partner is always helpful. But I think right now it's really getting very clear about when does my workday start and when does my workday end? Because for those of us who no longer have work-life space separation in the physical realm, which I'd say is most of us, these days just start flowing into one another and there's no end to any of it. So creating a structure is very, very helpful for people to understand and commit to. This is how I'm starting my day. This is how I'm ending my work day, so that you can stay focused throughout the day. The 3 M's stand for movement, mindfulness, and a morning meeting. If you're leading a team, I would highly encourage that you create a morning meeting where everybody collectively, an all-hands meeting, just calls in 15 minutes, checks in, what's up for the day, how they're feeling, doing a temperature check, looking at what's at the agenda, resolving quick issues and questions that might be in the room, and then letting everybody start the day. We're no longer in the space where we're getting to work at a certain time where we can say hello in the kitchen over coffee. So creating that virtually is really helpful. So those are the 3 M's. So there's the idea of creating a ritual, and I call it ritual for a reason, not a routine, because I think we have enough things on our to-do list, like a routine. We want ritual, something that is intentionally joyful, connecting, uplifting, elevating, that keeps you in a mindset and a mind space that is well resourced. That gives you an opportunity to feel well resourced throughout the day. And what it could look like is you get up in the morning, maybe you're a meditator. If you haven't meditated before, find something that's a mindful activity. And a client shared this with me yesterday, and I really loved it. Not a meditator, didn't really feel like getting into that. But he said that now that he's no longer commuting, he has time to make breakfast for 30 minutes. And it's really become part of his daily ritual to create food, sit down, eat it, pay attention to it. Well, before he would just like grab something, eat, go, and probably eat it on the subway or have his coffee on the subway and then eat at his desk, something like that. And so creating something that is a mindful activity, it could also be a mindfulness walk. So you're combining movement and mindfulness. I meditate and then I do cardio because I don't get to move around that much anymore. So I want to, just kind of get my body in flow, because 20 minutes of cardio gives me about 2 hours of heightened focus. That we know from research. Using this strategically right now is a pretty smart move, because getting up and getting in the flow is getting harder and harder for all of us. And so we want to make sure that we're creating a strategy for ourselves with positive habits that we can use to lead by example. So here we go. That's it. It's really that simple. What are your 3 M's? And they can vary from day to day, but it's a lot easier to do the same thing every day than it is to do it every other day. So creating a habit that's consistent then becomes a default. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to remember it. You just do it. So I would encourage you to pick something that you can stick with for now and just do it for the next month. I'm pretty sure we're all going to be in this situation for a little bit longer, so that a month-long commitment is not really that bad. So pick 3 M's that work for you. Then sit down and put that in your calendar and really see, where do you fit this in? Mine are in the morning. Then I have my team calls, I have my client calls. I do some emailing. I do intermediate fasting. So I eat at 11 and I eat at 5:30. Or 6 o'clock. Those are my 2 meal times. So I'm committed to my nutritional intake. And I have my beverages planned out through the day. I have a midday mindfulness break for movement because, again, we're not moving around. So I'm just doubling down on self-care and movement. And I have a very clear end day where I do something intentional that's different from my work day, that breaks up the day, even though the workspace is the same. If you could see the space right now, you'd know I'm sitting at my kitchen dining room table. And because I also sit and eat here, this is a ritual I've developed over the last couple of weeks, that this is my workspace. And when I'm done working, I put this away and it becomes my preparing food and dining room space again, so that I don't feel that my days are just endless and that there's a clear boundary for myself and a commitment to myself that I'm using my space and my time in a way that keeps me emotionally and physically well resourced. I don't know. I don't even know. Hey, I'm asking this for the team. I wish I could show like an example of a calendar. Is there a screen share option here? That'd be awesome. So it's my first time on here. I hope you guys can bear with me, but that would be something really awesome to do. I have some examples of this and that would be fun to see. But if not, I'm sure you could look it up. It's called time blocking and you can block it into your calendar right away. So strategically setting yourself up for the day allows you to, veer away from it and come back to it when you need it. I'm not suggesting a strict adherence to this routine and the calendar, because right now life happens. It happens very quickly. It happens all the time. We have to answer to very demanding jobs. We have to answer to really challenging problems. But having this as a guideline, as a framework on your calendar that with reminders that pop up is incredibly helpful for you to go right back to. Keep it simple. This is one step at a time. I can share my screen now. Okay, how do I do that? I'm going to test this out, guys. Bear with me. I think it's going to be fun. So I'm going to show this for a second. Is there share? More options. Maybe it's this button. No. All right. Well, challenged. I don't know how this works. Maybe we'll work it out. So, yeah, okay. It's in the bottom option. All right, guys. Let's see if we can work this out. Start recording, blur your background. Well, we'll deal with this another time. Maybe we'll do this another time and I show you my screen share option. Cannot figure this out right now. But back to what I was saying, it's about the intention that we're trying to keep ourselves in a framework that feels comfortable, that feels easy, that feels that we have opportunities to recharge, refresh, and come back to it. So we're not stuck in the demands of the day, and that we find a way to consistently go back to what works for us. And creating a plan and a roadmap for ourselves, like this time blocking with the 3 M's throughout the day, really being clear on this is my workspace. And even if for me, my kitchen, it's my kitchen table. Some of my clients go from one side of the couch to the next, whichever works for you. Get creative, figure out where the boundaries are. And teach this to your team. Share this with your colleagues. You can do that in your morning call with people to share, hey, best tricks. This is what worked for me this week. This is what worked for me today. This is what really challenged me. And this is what I'm really grateful for. Bringing mindfulness into the day, into your team culture, is helpful for people to stay emotionally well-resourced, which is the foundation of productivity. I can give you a lot of tools, but if we're emotionally not well-resourced and somewhere between overwhelm and apathy, it's not going to be helpful for anybody to pick this up, because that tool itself just becomes another thing on the to-do list that feels overwhelming. So we want to be more strategic about how we're setting ourselves up for success emotionally, psychologically, and also really making sure that we can answer to the sometimes overwhelming workload that is incoming consistently. The second strategy I want to discuss is getting really clear on what are these feelings that we're feeling on a moment-to-moment basis, and leading your teams with vulnerability and honesty, that people don't feel alienated in the feelings they're having today. Fear is very prominent. Anxiety is very prominent. Most people are struggling with this right now. I was talking to a physician yesterday, and she said she feels about 30 to 40 calls a day with people having panic attacks. And that was from 0 to 40 calls a day, people struggling with anxiety. And that's something not to ignore. So understanding that leadership also means that you're called to lead with empathy, and then you're called to lead authentically, allowing your feelings and allowing the feelings that are there in that moment to be real, and not letting them run the show at the same time. Now, let me explain what that means, okay? What do I mean by that? I mean, it's a difference between positive and negative denial. Positive denial is saying that I'm afraid, I'm fearful, I'm anxious, making lists of all the fears that are running through, not trying to repress them, not trying to pretend they're not there, not shaming ourselves or others for them being realistic, valid, or invalid. Fears of fears, and they come up, and allowing them to be there, allowing ourselves to feel our feelings, perhaps doing a fear writing exercise where you just write down all the fears. You can do that collectively. You can even allow team members to do it with each other. It's personal, so maybe it's just something to introduce into the team. Really allowing the fears to be real, written, and spoken out loud takes the power away from them. Sometimes it actually really humanizes us to each other. It allows us to kind of laugh a little bit. It's something that feels really real and vulnerable. And that is what allows you to deny it power over your present and your future. This is how you don't let fear run the show. Negative denial is the opposite. Negative denial is when we're like, I'm not afraid I got this. I'm not afraid I got this. I'm not afraid I got this. You know, like, blah. And then what do you have? You have an explosion. It's like a ticking time bomb because you're not addressing your feelings or trying to live in a complete range of fully expressed emotions. And that includes fear and it includes joy. So we want to make sure that we have the complete range of these emotions available to us. And so addressing them and dealing with them is a strategy that we can put in place. I call them the E and the T and the S. And that is, E is emotion. Recognize the emotion that is present. And that could be fear, that could be joy, could be depression, could be denial, could be sadness. Recognize the feeling. Name it. Call the feeling what it is. Then take a look at what are the triggers currently causing you to feel this way. If you're feeling very anxious, how many times a day did you check the news? Was that necessary? Other factors contributing to this anxiety that you could eliminate or set a framework around that would be more productive. Am I feeling in the midst of decision-making fatigue and overwhelm? If so, what are the contributing triggers and factors that are causing me to feel this way? And what are the strategies, which is the S, remember this is E, T, S, emotion, trigger, strategy. What are the strategies I can put in place that will make this better? And there's a honest recognition of what are my unhealthy strategies, meaning if I'm distracted, how many times do I go to the fridge and snack, or am I going to get a glass of water with lemon to stay hydrated? Most of the time when we lose focus, we might be dehydrated, so a glass of water with lemon can be really helpful. Knowing the difference and being honest and rigorously honest with ourselves about the feelings, the triggers, and the strategies that we're using, not to judge ourselves if we are going back to the fridge for the fourth time that day, the snack, if we're doing the chatting and snacking, but, with kindness and without judgment, really moving ourselves back to more productive ways of dealing with the triggers and the emotions, and also understanding the cause and effect relationship between those three. Healthier strategies, less triggers, less overwhelming emotions. Healthier range of motion that feels manageable. We're not judging fear and anxiety as bad. I'm just saying there's a range of emotions that feels more manageable, and then there's a range of emotion that feels unmanageable. And as we're leading teams, we're called to look at each person as an individual. And what you might have seen at this point is that each person deals with stress very differently. Their range of emotions are very different. Their stress reactions are very different. And it's challenging to understand how to meet each individual where they are at that time, and recognizing where are they, is that their highest self or is that their stress reaction? And am I taking that personally, or am I putting strategies in place to help them get back to their best version? So as a leader, learning that for ourselves and then knowing how to deploy that onto our team to work with them and keep them emotionally well resourced and thus productive, which is what we need them to be, is extremely important. And these tools are very, very helpful to use. Let's talk a little bit more about stress reactions. So what we see in stress reactions can be various different ways of people dealing with stress. Some people, for example, will speed up. They will start talking really quickly. They will start exercise, they will start doing things and executing very quickly. And other people slow down and make decisions slower. What happens between two team members that are basically the opposite of this is it creates a bungee effect, right? One person starts running. It's like, okay, we have to quickly iterate. So we're going to do this, this, and this. The other person says, no, we have to go back to the drawing board. We have to think this through in great detail. And in between, we have tension. And so knowing how people react in their day-to-day versus their stress reaction helps you to understand how to manage difficult conversation and how to manage these situations with kindness and compassion. I say this over and over again because right now we're all called to be more kind and more compassionate and okay with people slowing down, with people speeding up, and letting and also forgiveness, right? I've seen a lot of tension arise, and I said in a lot of meetings last week doing mediation between founders or team members, where a lot of tension started arising, and understanding that right now we're all in this together and making each other's lives more difficult by getting frustrated is not helpful to anybody. So now more so than ever, remember that we want to consistently forgive and understand and meet each other. I think there's a beautiful Rumi quote, right? There's a field beyond right or wrong, and I'll meet you there. Because being right or being wrong is not helpful right now, not ever, and especially not right now. And making sure that we show up for this and develop that moment-to-moment awareness. And this is where the 3Ms come back in. Where's your mindfulness practice? And you know what mindfulness really stands for? I'm not really that big of a fan of the idea of mindfulness. I use it a lot, but I mean, mindfulness really just stands for moment-to-moment awareness of self, right? Am I paying attention to what I'm doing? Am I fully present, or am I doing everything sort of halfway distracted? I call it multitasking, but I'm never really fully present because it's somehow more comfortable to be numb and checked out by doing several things at the same time and never questioning my own range of emotions, triggers, or strategies. We can kind of float around in this mediocrity. And to be honest, right now, I don't think that's working. You can tell who is emotionally well-resourced, able to be honest with themselves and others and lead accordingly, or who's checked out because they're definitely more reactionary and struggle to lead and struggle to meet people where they are emotionally. And they struggle to build that moment-to-moment awareness, and they're more likely to get stuck in overwhelm, and they're more likely to get stuck in decision-making fatigue because they're not able to break it down with that moment-to-moment awareness of like, what's the feeling, what's the trigger, what's the strategy, what do I do about it? What's the feeling, what's the trigger, what do I do about it? Is it real? Is it important? What do I do about it? Yes, it feels real, not that important. I can let that go, right? There's a strategic way you can set yourself up and keep yourself in frameworks that allow you to lead in uncertain times, because you no longer make life itself or your job or anything about the destination. You stay in life as a moment-to-moment experience. And that's all we have right now. When we talk about uncertainty, it's about thriving in uncertainty. And that is a moment-to-moment experience where we create micro solutions of mindfulness, awareness of self, and the emotional landscape of others in front of you, because then you can meet them where they are as a leader. If you recognize their behavior as an emotion that is passing through that might have been triggered by something else, and you can suggest a new strategy to help them pass that hurdle and back into the solution that we all need, because we have important decisions to make. There's a lot going on for all of us. Some of us as families at home, some of us, have to separate the childcare and the full-time job with the spouse and other family members. Some of us have to make very hard decisions for themselves, their family, and their teams. And so these small things, these small habits that are easy to reach, that are easy to employ, are what gets us there, are what helps us get through the day. And the beautiful thing is that this is no longer about the year, the quarter, 5-year plan. Nobody needs that anyway. This is about best thing I can do today, best thing I can do on an hour-to-hour basis, best thing I can do maybe for this week, if you're lucky. And being okay with that. This can be sometimes a one breath at a time experience. And learning how to lead responsibly as such in a time of uncertainty is what many of us are called to do so. I'm assuming that if you were here to listen to this right now, the title of this called you to this broadcast and you wanted to learn a couple of strategies. Now, before I leave you, and again, if you have questions, if you wanted to ask us any questions or make suggestions, just let us know in the chat box if you think you can reach me that way. I do want to hear from you. I always want to hear from you. I want to know what's going on for you, your company, your teams, and what's challenging to you so I can give you answers. So I'm on calls with teams probably 3 or 4 times a day, anywhere between teams of 12 to 250, different sizes on the call. Having 250 in one call, it gets a little much, but I work with teams of that size. And so I have a pretty good idea of what's going on with people on a week to week basis or day to day basis. Sometimes it changes from the beginning to the week to the end of the week, but it all seems to be a rather collective experience, independent from the countries and that they reside in. It seems that there is a very collective experience of emotions that most of us are going through. Some of us are emotionally more resourced than others. All of us are feeling this. And one thing I want to compare that to is we're grieving. All of us are going through different stages of grief. There's a lot of loss that we're experiencing. It might be a loss of a person, but it might be a loss of identity. It might be a loss of freedom. It might be a loss of money. It might be a loss of, your ability to do what you feel like doing. Engaging in activities that we used to enjoy. We're all much more restricted and confined. And that feeling of loss, whatever kind of loss it is quite real. And pretending that we as human beings don't have an emotional range isn't helpful, because all of us and anybody that's ever gone through the process of grieving over a loved one will tell you that this is not something you can skip. You can't skip ahead on processing your emotions. I mean, just I want to get to the finish line already. There is a process to it, and that process is called acknowledging your feelings, allowing them to be there, and putting strategies, understanding the triggers, understanding the strategies that you could put in place that help you through that. Connection to other human beings in a place of understanding that is non-judgmental is fundamental in times like this. It is fundamental to leadership today. Most books on leadership, I don't think apply today. We're entering into a new era of leading with empathy and understanding and rigorous honesty to yourself and other people. It's become okay to be vulnerable because most of us have nowhere to go. We're all on video calls. You know, what's ever happening in our life, whether it's kids, spouses, or furry friends, they probably make an appearance at some point, being disruptive to what we would like to be the perfect workspace. The 5 stages of grieving, or as I like to call them, and I talk about this a lot in my classes around entrepreneurship, because I call them the 5 stages of momentum and the 5 stages of failing forward. Those entrepreneurs in particular are emotionally a little bit more resourced than others because they are, you know, the entrepreneurial journey is paved with many bricks of failure. They're not paved by good luck or knowledge because most of them are trying to do something that has never been done before. So their emotional resilience tends to be higher than others, mostly through learning and by going through these 5 stages of momentum, as I like to call them, more quickly than others. And that is, they look at a mistake, they look at something that's lost or that's not working. And what they see is it's like there's shock, there's denial, maybe a little bit of, you know, frustration around that. And we're collectively experienced or have experienced that a little bit further down the road, I'd say right now. But there's been this sort of shock, denial, like I just want to pretend it's not happening. I don't want to deal with it. You know, like let me just pretend that just didn't happen. But of course, everything keeps coming back until you address it. You can't push it away. You have to take ownership of whatever you're feeling or the situation that arises. The next step to that is anger and frustration and, you know, maybe a little bit of bargaining with reality, that, you know, finding strategies to circumvent the discomfort of accepting that life is just the way it is right now, that work is just the way it is right now, that leadership is just the way it is right now. And it's frustrating and it's really, you know, I've seen a lot of people trying to bargain with reality or going into denial. It's like, oh, I'm invincible and oh, this can't reach me and then nothing's going to happen to me. I'm well positioned or not well positioned. I do care, I don't care. And really bargaining with reality until they get to a phase that typically tends to be a phase of a little bit of numbness. I've seen a lot of this last week where people are very checked out, distracted, numb, you know, a lot of apathy, overwhelm, inability. Thursday last week in particular, it seemed to have been a day like that across the board. There was a general feeling of overwhelm and apathy in the room. And that too is a natural emotion. It is okay to have that. We don't have to fight our feelings all the time. Now we want frameworks around them to say, okay, well, this is how I get back in motion, right? This is where we use the 3 M's, some form of mindfulness. We look at the ETS, the T and the S, and make sure that we're staying aware, that we're not checking out. There's an active way of feeling numbness and overwhelm, and there is a way to completely check out and check out from life and get depressed. And we don't have to do that. We can help people when we see the signs. We can help them come back to the team, rejoin the team, and add to your team culture a way for them to engage with each other in a way to uplift them. We're not trying to carry people. We want to give them tools to be emotionally well-resourced and strategic in how they live their lives and how they deal with complicated situations, just like the ones that we're in right now. That is leadership. After this process of numbness, many of us go through some like a release, you know, this sort of cathartic way of letting it go. So you come out of the apathy, you come out of that numbness, you start going back into motion, you start employing those strategies that you may have put in place a little earlier, but didn't feel like using, and definitely didn't use it when you were feeling distracted and numbed out. But there will be a phase where you're looking at that calendar that we set up and you see, oh, now's my time for movement. I might actually get up and do it this time. This is my time to eat food. I'm going to have healthy food. I'm going to put down the chips and the cookies, and I'm going to eat my greens. I'm going to eat my vegetables. I'm going to eat brain foods that are going to keep me focused. I'm going to go to sleep at a reasonable time. I'm going to stop going into the vortex of my inbox and the news feeds that lead us down really anxiety-riddled paths. And somewhere along those lines, we then reach acceptance. And that acceptance is in that moment-to-moment awareness that that is all we really have. And that's all we also need to do right now. Break it down to the moment-to-moment opportunity to make hard decisions and to lead your family, your life, and your team in a direction with wholeheartedness, and to make it through this time with compassion and kindness. So this, my friends, is it from me today. I hope this was helpful. I hope that I get to see you guys again, maybe sometime soon down the road. If you have any questions, if there are any burning desires or something in particular you're struggling with, let us know. I'm sure that we can incorporate that in another feature and another broadcast for you. So thank you for your undivided attention, and thank you for your time. And thank you for your love and your energy and your kindness. You're doing just fine. You're doing great out there. This is a really difficult time for all of us. And for the most part, I see people showing up with kindness, compassion, and helping each other out as much as they can. So keep going. You're doing great. Thank you. It's really nice to meet you guys.